Hello, and welcome to my channel. One of the most common errors I see as an English teacher, even from advanced speakers, is confusing when to use the past simple and the present perfect. The present perfect is a very commonly used tense in English, and it is more complex than the past simple. It also doesn't have a direct equivalent in many other languages, which is why sometimes students find it challenging. So, how can you know when to use the past simple and when to use the present perfect? You've come to the right place because I am going to tell you. There are 3 questions you need to ask before determining whether to use the past simple or the present perfect. Question 1. Is the action finished or unfinished? If the action is finished, we use the past simple. If the action is unfinished, we use the present perfect. Question 2. Are you talking about a specific time in the past or a general experience in the past? If it is a specific time, we use the past simple. If it is a general experience, we use the present perfect. Number 3, does the past action affect the present? If yes, it does affect the present, we use the present perfect. If it doesn't affect the present, we use the past simple. See? Simple. Those are the 3 questions you need to ask. Before we look at these 3 questions more closely, you might ask, what's the difference in their structures? How do you form the past simple and the present perfect? Let me tell you now. When learning English verbs, you will see them in 3 main forms: the infinitive, the past simple, and the past participle. A nice, regular verb is easy because the past simple and the past participle are the same. You just add ed. Infinitive, to walk. Past simple, walked. Past participle, walked. Unfortunately though, English has many irregular verbs. For example, to eat. To eat, past simple, ate. Past participle, eaten. To sing, past simple, sang. Past participle, sung. To go, past simple, went. Past participle, been or gone, depending on whether the action is towards or away from. Now, the past simple is easy. As the name indicates, you just take this second form of the verb. I walked, I ate, I sang, I went. The present perfect we form by taking the verb to have and adding the past participle. I have walked, I have eaten, I have sung, I have been or gone. I have been to France. Remember, we tend to use contractions when speaking. So it's more natural to say, I've been to France, rather than I have been to France. Also remember, if it is the 3rd person, so he, she, or it, we use has instead of have. She has been to France. Again, the contraction, she's been to France. As I said, one of the first questions you need to ask is the action finished or unfinished? Take these 2 sentences. I've studied a lot today. I studied a lot today. Both of these are grammatically correct, but they have slightly different meanings. I've studied a lot today implies today isn't finished and I'm still studying. I've studied a lot today and I'm going to study some more. I studied a lot today implies the action is finished. In the past, I studied a lot today, I've stopped studying. Let's take another example. I've lived in Florence for a year, or I lived in Florence for a year. Again, both of these sentences are grammatically correct, but they have different implications. I've lived in Florence for a year, it's uncompleted. I'm still living in Florence. I lived in Florence for a year. It's a completed action in the past. I no longer live in Florence. I now live somewhere else. Obviously, knowing which one is correct or which one to use depends on the context. Much of our language use depends on context. It's the only way it makes sense. So let's take those two examples with more context. Present perfect. I've lived in Florence for a year. I'm doing a PhD on history of art, so I'll probably be here another year before I return home. Past simple. I lived in Florence for a year back in 2012. It was one of the happiest years of my life. And both of those examples now make more sense because they have more context. The second potential question to ask: does the action you're talking about belong to a specific time, or is it a general experience? We use the present perfect to discuss past experience because our life is unfinished. That's why you will often hear the question, have you ever, when someone is asking about an experience. Have you ever done something? Have you ever been to China? Have you ever flown in a helicopter? Have you ever ridden an elephant? All of these questions are in the present perfect because they are referring to the experience in a life that is unfinished. Look at these two example sentences. I've been to the USA 3 times. My grandmother went to the USA 3 times. The difference is, I'm still alive. I've been to the USA 3 times up until now. I might go again. But unfortunately, my grandmother isn't alive. She died, which is why we use the past simple. In her life, she went to the USA 3 times. So we use the present perfect to talk about experience. However, when we go on to give more detail or refer to a specific time in the past, we use past simple. Have you ever broken a bone? Yes, I have broken a bone. I broke my leg in 2018 when I was skiing. It was very painful. Present perfect to answer about an experience. Yes, I have broken a bone. Past simple to give the specific detail. I broke my leg in 2018. Have you ever been to Australia? Yes, I have. I went for 2 months when I was 19. Again, present perfect to confirm the experience. Past simple to go into more detail. We can't talk about the present perfect without discussing for and since, because we often use those two words with the present perfect. Remember, for refers to the duration of something, whereas since refers to a starting point. I've lived in London for 10 years. I've lived in London since 2014. We can use for with the past simple. Last year, I stayed with my sister for 2 weeks. Completed action in the past referring to a duration, which is why we use the past simple. However, we can't use since with the past simple because since implies the action is continuing up to the present. I couldn't say, I studied literature since 2014. Instead, you would say, I studied literature from 2014 to 2018 because there is a finishing point. You can't use since because you are no longer studying. However, confusingly, a sentence like this would be correct. I've lived here since I finished my degree. But since is followed by the past simple. How does that work? Well, because here, since I finished my degree is the starting point. It's the same as saying I've lived here since 2017. And we come to the third potential question. Does the past action affect the present or not? We use the present perfect when there is a connection between this past action and the present, when something in the past affects or has an impact in the present. For example, they have shut the road I normally use. Although it's a past action, they're shutting the road, it affects my now. They have shut the road, therefore now it will take me longer to drive to work. Oh, someone has already taken that library book. So someone has taken this library book in the past, but it affects my now because I need it to finish my essay. This connection to the present is why we often see the news reported in the present perfect. The government has revealed its new budget. A ship has sunk off the coast of Cornwall, and that is because the news often has an effect in the present. It is important here to note, however, a difference between British English and American English, because very often Americans will use the past simple when talking about a past event that affects the present, unlike the British, who will use the present perfect, which is actually correct. For example, a British person would ask, "Have you eaten yet?" Whereas an American would ask, "Did you eat yet?" So if in an American movie or TV series, you hear someone using the past simple when referring to a past action that affects the present, that will be why. Don't let that confuse you. And also, use the present perfect because it's correct. Although, as someone who is British, I'm obviously biased. Finally, two other words often used with the present perfect are just and already. Just we use when the action is in the very recent past. I've just arrived means I arrived moments earlier. Already, on the other hand, we use when we want to communicate that an action is completed, but not necessarily recently. If I say, "I have already finished my dissertation," that might be a week or even a month ago. It just means that it has been done, it has been completed. "I've just finished my dissertation" means I finished it in the recent past. There you are, that's everything. There was a lot of information there, so well done if you made it all the way to the end of the video. In summary then, the three main factors that determine whether to use the present perfect or the past simple. 1, is the action finished or unfinished? 2, are you referring to a specific time or a general experience? 3, does the past action affect the present? I hope this helped you understand the difference between these two tenses and when to use them. If you did find it helpful, please feel free to subscribe, as I plan on making many more videos. Hopefully, I will see you in the next one.